the vertical direction. SZ2, and it reverts to where it was. So the same with rotate. I can select a face, press R, and swing that face around as I want. Escape to get out of it. I could go R, Y, and put a tilt on it like that, and so on. In this mode, another useful thing is Blender doesn't actually have an align tool for aligning vertices, or what you can do instead is use the scale function. So just get into vertex select again, and I'm going to move a few vertices around. So we've been playing around with our object for a while, and things have got out of line, and actually we want those vertices to be nice and horizontal again and parallel with the lower ones. So how do we do that? Okay, get into position so you can see all of those, and there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4. With B, drag around them, they're all selected. Now if I press SZ0 and click, they're all lined up. So here's another trick you might do with S and 0. So if I've got 4 vertices selected, if I press S0, not surprisingly, they all become one. They all become one vertex like that, or it looks like one vertex. And they stay all together like that because of the selection I had, active element. So I could go back to Control Z and select median point, puts the thing in the middle there, and then do SO, and I've got a pyramid. But in fact I've still got 4 vertices here, it's just that they've got no separation at all, they're overlying each other. If I actually wanted to keep that, I've got 3 vertices too many. So I can go into this down here, Mesh, Vertices, and Remove Doubles. And up at the top it says removed 3 vertices. So in fact I've actually saved myself 3 vertices, which will be important later on when you've got a large object. You don't want to have redundant vertices lying around. They add to the cost when you import them later on. Just go back to the cube again, Control Z, and again select the whole lot and do SZ0 and remove the doubles. Then if I go to the face select mode and click, you'll see I've converted it to a plane, which is quite interesting. Not something you'll do very often to an object like that, but there can be very good reasons for flattening things sometimes, and that's the way you'd want to do it. Okay, so now I've actually made my cube into a plane, and it's a good moment to show you the E function. If I press E on the keyboard, oops, select my object, E, and then just move the mouse. I pressed on the top face of the object, and so by default when I press E and then move the mouse, it will extrude the object in that direction, the Z direction, in the direction of the face. If I do it again, E, and extrude, it does it again. And now you can see I've actually got an extra set of faces with an edge loop here dividing them. I can do the same on the sides. If I click here and do E, it'll drag out along the axis perpendicular to the face, and I could do the same here, E, and drag out along that axis. So now I'm going to build up an object, and this is often the best way to start. Start with a cube and then start dragging, extruding out, creating new faces, roughing out the outline of the object that you want to build. I think just the last thing in this tutorial, remember you can select multiple faces or edges or vertices by shift clicking. So if I selected both those faces there. You can see them highlighted. And then I did SY, because I've got the cursor positioned here in the middle. The pivot point is in the center here. I've got median point selected, so it's in the median of those two things. It actually makes the faces squeeze together along that axis, but both in the same proportions. And that can be really important if you want to maintain symmetry in the object. Select all the elements that you want to scale at the same time. Do SZ, and they squash down in that direction. So to recap, go into edit mode. You can select the faces, edges, or vertices using those buttons down there, and you can decide whether you want to select through the object or just the visible faces by toggling that control. Now, the last thing to add, though, is watch out when you're using E for extrude, which we looked at. So if I click on that face and do E, the moment I've done E, that's been created. Now, if I press Escape, it seems to have got out of it, but it hasn't. It's actually created that new face. And if I drag on it, you can see that it's still really there. If you have gone and created a face you don't want, remember to check whether in fact you have, and if you didn't want it, do Control Z to get back until you're definitely sure that it's gone now, but it's gone. Otherwise it's quite easy to end up with duplicate faces or edges or vertices lying around the model, which can cause problems later on. In the next tutorial we'll look at some more editing techniques, and an awful lot of different ways of manipulating your mesh in Blender, and I don't want to go through very many more of them. There's plenty of good tutorials on that on the web. If you get to this point where you can select and start to build, I think you'll be able to hunt those down for yourself. The next tutorials, therefore, will have look a bit more at the at editing, but I'll start to move on to some of the tips and tricks as to how to get a model looking right and generally set up for exporting into the Collada format and then getting it uploaded to Second Life. I'll also be looking in the other tutorials at how you set up different faces so that you can texture different parts of the object when you upload it, and how to set up UV maps so that when you do apply textures to your final object, they'll appear as you want them to appear.